Okay. So this is the Climate and Environment Committee meeting on May 19th. And we started the recording, the roll call. So we have Commissioner Lafferty, Commissioner O'Connell, Commissioner Davies, Commissioner Grout, Commissioner Abreu, Commissioner Starr, and myself. Do we have any comments on the minutes? As always, Sharon, we appreciate you doing those for us. It's a lot of work. So do we want to accept the minutes? Dick is muted and it looks like maybe he's proposing we accept the minutes.
So moved.
And do I have a second? Liz is seconding. Do we have to have any discussion on that, or can we go ahead and take a vote? Let's just go ahead. Is everybody in favor of accepting the minutes? Yes, everyone's in favor of accepting the minutes. Okay. So I thought maybe the first thing that we should do, since we put it off twice, is really continue the discussion about the build out analysis, because that is an item that's on our list and we haven't done it. I also have requested that we not present either today or tomorrow because we're not ready. And we just, I need to get a document back out to everybody on the committee before we move forward. But I think we'll have some time to talk a little bit about the takeaways from the last meeting after we do the build out analysis, and then also review some of the suggestions from different proposals and maybe conversations we've had. So Sharon and Liz, we had a chart from you previously that dealt with the build out analysis. Is that the same one you want to use today?
I guess so. I think we haven't added anything new since then. I think
Okay.
that the thing that we wanted to just have some more discussion around was, are we going to change that one? Are we going to alter in any way that one place in the charter that deals with this?
And for the good of the group, which section are you talking about in the charter?
I gotta go pull it up. I apologize for not being ready. I think it's section 2.32D. I'm sorry, I have to go grab it again myself.
That's okay.
Woefully unprepared. But if somebody has it up and they can share the screen, that's great. Otherwise, Liz, do you happen? Oh, she's in the car.
There isn't a section 2.32.
It's in the chart itself. It references.
It's in the
What? It's in the charter? Yeah, I've got the charter right here.
Yeah, there's a section in the charter.
Yeah.
That is dealing with land use.
Okay.
And in our chart, it references which section in the chart.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I'm going to see if I can grab the chart and bring it up. I'm sorry, I'm just woefully struggling to get on the meeting this morning. Hang on.
Yeah.
So let me tell you.
Unless somebody else has it, I'm going to go find it.
I have the section right here. It's according to the chart you gave us. It's section 2.30, and then number 2.
2D, right?
2D.
Number 2, item D.
I see.
And that says, ensure that all systems, procedures, and use of technology under county council be periodically reviewed and actions taken to ensure that optimum practices are being employed. Is that the right one?
2D reads, adopt by ordinance comprehensive plans and development regulations, including plans for the present and future development and improvement of the county. That's 2D.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was in the wrong section.
You ready to get that?
Yeah. Okay.
We're all getting our footing this morning.
It's the county council shall exercise its legislative power by adoption and enactment of ordinances, resolutions. It shall have the power to, and then what I read, which was adopt by ordinance comprehensive plans and development regulations, including plans for the present and future development and improvement of the county. So that's what the council can do presently.
Right. And what are you thinking, Sharon?
Mike is saying it should be optimal, not optimum or whatever, but I'm trying to get the document up on my screen. So that's my priority right now. Can I,
Okay.
if I can share my screen, I think I can. bring it
Okay, you should be able to share it, yeah.
Y'all see it?
Yes.
Okay, so let me see if I can just go find that language here. Yes, okay, so here we have some proposed language. Now, I had proposed a small change to 2D, but Alexandra Gayak had suggested a more major change. So maybe we could just take a look at both. Thank you. We could take a look at both of those.
Okay.
So you can see where it says some suggested wording for recommended language changes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the current language, as we just heard, is adopt by ordinance comprehensive plans and development regulations, including plans for the present and future development and improvement of the county. And so what I was suggesting was just change it by this much. Adopt by ordinance the counties, just for, this is really just for clarity and a little more specificity. Adopt by ordinance the county's comprehensive plan and development regulations, including plans, everything else is the same until you get to an improvement of the county. And then I added, as set forth in the Growth Management Act and in the vision statement and recommendation in San Juan County's comprehensive plan. And I just put that in there for emphasis because I hear people complaining that we're not in compliance with the Growth Management Act, that the council has been ignoring the comp plan. So I thought it might be, I just wanted to add that language. That's all I was doing.
Uh-huh.
Just to strengthen that these things need to be paid attention to.
Mm-hmm.
What Alexandra was suggesting, and I thought it was worth considering, is to take out item D completely and replace it with a number 4. Because right now there's only numbers 1, 2, and 3. So this would make it its own separate number, and it would read the county council, or suggested to read, the county council shall ensure that the San Juan County Comprehensive Plan fulfills its vision statement through number 1, adoption by ordinance and revision of the county code and the comprehensive plan and development regulations, and number 2, through recruiting, hiring, appointing, and supervising of all county staff and citizen advisory committee and commissions. The county council shall further ensure that both be implemented, maintained, and enforced by law and in practice. Conditional use permits and or other mechanisms shall not be used to evade otherwise applicable county code. Now, I like that, but I don't think we can legally do that. We can't order the county council to do anything.
Right.
Madam
So,
Chair,
Yes.
so Sharon, if is okay if I weigh in a little?
yeah, sure.
So we do need advice, counsel in terms of whether we can go that far. And I think the point that you can, all see and what we're attempting to do here is, to slow down the destruction that is occurring and to get in front of it instead of trying to, slap hands or, restore forests that, can come down in minutes and will take generations to reestablish themselves. And so I think trying to just find the strongest language we can and to recognize that right now our build out is not in any way connected to our carrying capacity. Those two documents live in silos and are not influencing each other. So we need to find a way for our carrying capacity to inform what's allowed in terms of build out to occur. Thanks, Sharon.
Okay, Bob, you have a question?
Uh, Well, I just wanted to state that it was my recollection, and I wish I could be more precise. It was my recollection that Randy did tell us, and this is probably what Sharon was talking about how we can't do what's been recommended. Randy told us, it's my recollection, that we could not mess with the Growth Management Act's product, the comprehensive plan, as far as how it worked, because it was outside our bailiwick and was a state law, and that we didn't have the ability to do that. I don't know if I'm remembering that correctly, frankly, but I'm thinking that he said something like that, and that it caused us to back off. But I personally, I would like to see us go as far as we can in this regard. So, I mean, it's obviously Alexandra's suggestion is certainly right in spirit in my mind, but I don't know.
Yeah. So what we can do, like what we came up with yesterday in the process committee, is we know that we can't order the county council to do anything, and they are not apparently obligated to carry out. They're not obligated to carry out anything in the comp plan. But what we want to do is put pressure on them and say there's going to be a new level of pressure and scrutiny to bring these things to fruition. So what we said yesterday in the process committee was strongly recommend.
Yeah, I tried to get the committee to adopt a mandatory report. If we couldn't tell them what to do legislatively, then maybe we could tell them what to do executively by having to put out a mandatory report every year that said how they were doing X. And in this case, in our case, it was how they were upholding the values that we had set out. But here it could be how they were implementing the comprehensive plan. But the committee thought that was going too far and that we couldn't do that. So we backed it off to, what did we say, Sharon? What was the language we used about the report? We couldn't mandate it, but we asked, we strongly recommended, or we highly recommended.
Yeah.
Right.
Strongly recommend.
The idea was that the public would then expect a report because we had strongly recommended it, and we could put that out to the public and say, we could ask the climate commissioner, for instance, to say, where's our report? Where's our report? Even though it wasn't absolutely mandatory, it had been strongly recommended. That's all.
Yeah, and I said I was going to write a song called "Where's Our Report," and everybody would sing it. No, I'm kidding, but it's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Kyle?
Do it, Sharon.
Do it, Sharon. Thank you, Madam Chair. This may have been asked and answered. If so, forgive me, and I can take the question offline. Where do the people, sitting here today in this conversation, where do we see the actual rulemaking of the OCE commissioner fitting with some of this language? Is there an avenue for some of this to take place once there's been some development in that position and some sort of suggestive or kind of recommended push happening around which some of the rulemaking can happen? And maybe not having Kevin here.
Kevin has joined us.
Oh, good. I'm not sure if you've heard the whole question, but I'm curious there because I think maybe some of this, not that the language isn't helpful, but some of what we talked about yesterday was, limiting the wordiness and the sheer volume of amendments and language by addressing some of this stuff in action, in the future function of the OCE. So I just wonder what people think there. Is that an avenue, or am I relying too much on that future work? Is it worth unsharing the screen so you can see everyone?
Sorry.
Maybe not.
Anne-Marie, I have a comment.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, please go ahead. Let's see.
And this may be obvious to everybody here on the committee, but passing the ordinance is, of course, a legislative function that is given to the council. But producing regulations is traditionally, producing regulations traditionally is an executive action. And the federal government, for instance, the various departments put out the regulations, the various departments that work under the executive branch, and they are tied to the statutes, and they have to stay within the four walls of the statute that they're implementing. But that's what they are. It's like a mini implementing ordinance, but the executive power gets to do that. in this case, we're giving executive power to the climate commissioner. So the climate commissioner ought to be able to write rules that execute ordinances that that have been passed by the council that fit within the parameters of the climate commissioner's job description, basically.
Right, right. I think that's correct. Yes, Dick, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say what Bob said is exactly correct. That's what rules do. I mean, I did rulemaking when I was with the state, participated in it. It's always a group activity.
Yeah.
And that's what we'd be doing, is giving the climate commissioner that executive or administrative authority. And you have to act within the boundaries of what the legislation says. So the legislation basically creates sideboards, and then you operate within that.
Yes, Kyle.
So I wonder, and this may be just my lack of understanding of it, but what's an example then of how that specific rulemaking, knowing that there aren't yet ordinances that drive delivery of the comp plan or better deliverables from growth management, how would that maybe specifically be achieved? What rulemaking example for the commissioner would help move forward the design of the comp plan so far, so that it was actionable, so we didn't have to rely so much on language and get stuck where we don't have legislative authority and can't really, we're not changing the language of the comp plan or how it's derived, et cetera. How might that happen? Because I think that's when I want to talk to the public about selling this, you know, we've talked about this rulemaking and the value of it, and I just want to make sure I understand how that works.
Bob and Dick.
I wrote a certain small percentage of the rules and regulations for the state of Tennessee in health areas and various other ways. And I can tell you basically what you're doing is you've got a statute where the legislature, or in this case, the council, has told you what should happen. And you write a rule that describes how it happens, how you can make whatever the legislature has proclaimed ought to happen, how you can make it happen, the details of it. So anytime that we have an ordinance that deals with anything that is within the ambit of our commissioner, somebody could toss out an example. I mean, the legislature might say, we're going to build some airplanes, and the rules and regulations might say we're going to take in so many bids, and we're going to make sure that the widgets are produced in America, and we're going to blah blah blah. You know, that there can be all kinds of things like that. Kevin probably has specific examples, I bet, that he's run into. That's all.
Dick, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I think maybe some folks here are not aware of or not thinking about the fact that the comprehensive plan doesn't exist by itself. There's a whole set of development regulations that are adopted by ordinance, and those are intended to implement the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. And my sense here, and Kevin may have a different view, is what the climate official would be doing is looking at the plan and those regulations and trying to find the voids, the absences of things that pertain specifically to how the county can contribute to protecting the environment and having a positive effect on climate change. So it would be looking for those things that are missing because they weren't contemplated at the time. And off the top of my head, Kyle, I can't give you an example because we aren't there yet. But that's what I see would be happening. These rules would be specifically pertaining to climate and the environment.
Kevin, you want to say something, and then Kyle?
I was just going to say, I mean, there's a number of different ideas you could consider. under critical areas ordinance, under the shoreline master program, and so on. The main point I wanted to make, though, is that there are rules regarding rulemaking, not the least of which is that there is a very thorough and engaging public process. And then there is also a vetting, with the prosecutor's office and others to make sure, as Dick said, that this rulemaking is within the confines of within the parameters of the scope under the ordinance in which they're working. And there's two questions that we're discussing as a subcommittee right now for rulemaking. One is the ability to create rules for county ordinances that are applicable for this commissioner. And we would cite that in the statute. And the second is rules where the state has granted authority. And there's some questions on that we're still going through. But the main point I wanted to make is that there's a very involved process that exists similar to, frankly, when the comprehensive plan is adopted or the critical areas ordinance is adopted or the shoreline master program is adopted. There's a vetting with citizens committees and then citizen input through public hearings and so on.
Okay. And Kevin, just to catch you up, we decided to continue our discussion on the build out analysis. And Kyle, we're talking about suggested language in section 2.30D2 of the charter amendment that deals with adopting by ordinance comprehensive plans and development regulations, including plans for the present and future development and improvement of the county. And then Sharon and Liz have suggested some language, and then Alexandra has also suggested some language. So there's two sets of language there that is being considered. And Kyle's question and other questions that I think have come forward have to do with, is this really something that would be more in the bailiwick of the climate commissioner? And at what point would it come into play? Sharon, correct me if I didn't present that correctly.
Well, yes. And just looking at the language that Alexandra was proposing in light of better understanding of what we can and cannot do. Looking at that language and saying, okay, we can't enforce anything. We can't make this county council do anything. We can't make the county council enforce any aspect of the comp plan. But is that language in? Maybe we should look at the language we have for the Climate and Environment Commissioner right now and see what, if anything, from what Alexandra sent might be missing and what might be a good place to include that in some way in that part. And at the same time, maybe we could make the change that I recommended to that 2.302 section D, and I'll put that back up on the screen so y'all can see it again, that maybe we can just make the language that's there a little bit more specific and a little bit more powerful.
Kevin, your hand is up and Bob's hand is up, so go ahead. You have to unmute yourself, Kevin.
I was lowering my hand first, sorry.
Oh,
thank you, Madam Chair. So I don't want to throw a wrench in other people's spokes. Is that the right analogy? I don't know. I actually don't think the build out analysis is, I think the build out analysis is a function that could take place after this department is established. I do not see the build out analysis as a function of government that we would do in the county charter.
Well, do you want to look at what I was proposing to put in anyway? Because it was really not very much. It was just kind of.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I don't feel the build out analysis is, so the county charter creates the structure for government. And so I don't see the build out analysis as part of that. I see it as you could say that the county, the Office of Climate and Environment shall consider a build out analysis as a top priority in their first 24 months or something. But yeah, beyond that, I'm concerned that it's outside of the scope of the charter.
Okay, Bob, did you want to say something? And Sharon.
Yes, this is kind of a general thing that I would really like to see added to the duties of the commissioner. And that would be to report to the public the status of all recommendations that have been made by this group to the council and other persons or bodies, because the recommendations of which, of course, we will have made because we don't have the authority to command them to do X, Y, and Z. But if the commissioner took it as had it as one of her or his duties to put that such a report out and say this is how they have done on these recommendations, it would add a little bit of oomph, because the public would then become familiar with the short list of recommendations that we had made and would be expecting council to act upon it, and there would be more pressure upon council, and our recommendations thereby would have more oomph. And I'm bringing that up because we're going to make some in the process committee, and we may well be making some in this committee also.
Okay. Yes, Dick. Or Sharon, did you have your hand up? No. Okay, Dick, go ahead.
Well, I've had the same problem with the build out analysis that Kevin just articulated, but I haven't voiced it because there seemed to be a lot of enthusiasm to discuss it. But I don't understand where it's within the Charter Review Commission's authority either, because it is not structural. I just think it's not something we can legally get into. We have to wait. I agree with Kevin. It's something that could logically be taken up by the climate official, but I don't see how we get it in the charter. I don't think it'll fly.
Okay. Others? Okay. Sharon?
All right. Well, being that we don't seem to have support for making any change to the language in the charter at all, I guess I'm just going to abandon that. I mean, I do appreciate that what the work we really need to do is in the Climate and Environment Office and Commissioner. I just wondered if we could do something to make it stronger in the charter without demanding anything. That's all.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes,
I come in?
yes, I'm sorry, go for it, yeah.
Well, actually, to Dick's point, I think what Kevin said, I don't think Kevin said we couldn't put it in the charter. I think he said we couldn't command the council to do anything regarding it. And specifically, as an example of what we might could do, I think he mentioned asking or telling the climate commissioner that it was his duty to look at this. And that is instructing an executive officer to do something, not instructing the legislative folks whose that legislative power they have is beyond our ken. It's past what we can do, and the executive powers are something that we can modify. And so I believe we could get Sharon's thing in under the climate commissioner, if not relating to the council, if we wanted to think about that. Now, there's an additional problem of, does that rise to the level of us wanting to devote a spot on the ballot as regard to the other things that are competing? But that's a different question.
More
That's all.
discussion? Yes, Kyle.
I think just to feel fully comfortable at the end of the conversation today, I think I'm hearing maybe two different things. Back to what Liz said about making sure that in terms of build out, that carrying capacity and that concept and true build out are not at odds or not so far apart. Are we in agreement that if the comp plan is enacted and utilized to its fullest capacity or extent, that in fact it does limit us to carrying capacity? I don't have enough familiarity with it to suggest that to people who bring up that question. I certainly do believe there's a lot more to do with it on an ongoing basis, and I'd like to see us actually get some traction and be bold, as we've said, on some of that. But I'm not sure I've heard that if the comp plan is utilized fully, that it gets us to that definition, or gets us close to the concept that we're meeting carrying capacity, or we're somehow. Can someone speak to that, Liz? Or
Dick has his hand up, and then Liz, you want to go after Dick?
Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm speaking specifically to that, Kyle. I'm sitting here reading these two versions, and with all due respect to whoever wrote the first one, if that was you, Sharon, I don't know who else. But if I'm sitting on the county council and I read that statement, I'm going to say to myself, what? That's what we're doing. We're already doing that. It doesn't say anything new to me. The alternative, Alexandra's, again, with all due respect to her, I had the same reaction, and it also goes too far. So I don't see what's being accomplished here. Plus what I said earlier, I don't think we can do this in the charter.
Well,
And
I
then
think
Bob.
Liz was Liz next though?
I think
Yeah,
I'm
I
up.
think Liz was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to answer Kyle's question, the way the comp plan is currently written, it does not address build out or connecting capacity to build out. This Friday, there is a recommended change that's being presented. But if that doesn't get added in there, the comp plan doesn't address build out at this point.
Bob?
The comp plan or the charter? You're talking about the comp plan?
The comp plan doesn't, Kyle's question was, is if I understood it, and Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, if the comp plan is enforced, will it in fact provide the protections and safeguard for the future of our community and the environment? And in specific relationship to build out, the answer is no. The way the comp plan is currently written, it doesn't do that. There will be a proposal being brought forward on Friday to amend the language. And if that goes through, then it will. If it doesn't get added, the comp plan does not address build out and capacity. That's my understanding.
Okay. Bob, you want to go ahead?
We should also be aware that Sharon's section here, if we adopt it, it cannot make the council do this, because what it would read is the council shall exercise its legislative power by adoption and enactment of ordinances, resolutions. It shall have the power to : so it's saying it shall have the power to adopt ordinances, adopt by ordinance the plan. And that doesn't mean they have to do it. It just they have the power to do it. And they could just walk off and ignore it, as, from what I understand, is the general policy, has been the general policy to ignore it. So I don't know how helpful that is. It does kind of remind them that, hey, we're telling you can do this, but that's about all it does.
Okay. Kevin?
I have to reiterate that, first of all, the comp plan is not our business. Like we're creating a structure. Okay, we're going to create this awesome department that's going to be able to do a lot of this stuff and support the community development and planning department in their implementation and work on the comp plan. I think it'll be a significant value to all the issues that we're talking about, as well as the county council's ability to follow up on what they want to do. I also need to reiterate that portions of the comp plan we have an adopted comp plan, and portions of the comprehensive plan through ordinances such as the critical areas ordinance, the zoning maps and so on have been adopted, and those regulations are clear. They can be stronger or weaker depending on who you talk to, but I just want to make sure that we all understand that the comprehensive plan is a living organic process. And it gets re-upped by statute through a very detailed process. What we heard from our staff, which is very important to consider, is that they are so overwhelmed with those constant updates that they're having trouble getting to the implementation of key pieces of it. I think that's what we're getting caught up in. But I don't know how useful it is for us to continue discussing how we can engage on that, other than creating the process so that the professionals that we bring on because of this department will be, the professionals we have will be able to do their job better, and they'll have a champion and an elected official.
Okay. Sharon and then Kyle.
Well, I'm sufficiently convinced that we should move on at this point.
Kyle?
I just wanted to, I guess, to respond some to Kevin. I heard us in a previous meeting, I think it was the last one or the one before that, say that I guess I would like to leave today feeling like making sure that the work that you did, Madam Chair, to sort of articulate, or that all of us have done, you did the last version of, to articulate that the work product or the job description of the commissioner covers the areas that we're trying to capture here. Okay. So we did say we wanted to make sure that that roadmap was clear. And so this was a priority area, not that it was, not that we needed to solve build out in the charter under this committee's work. That's okay.
So when we identify different areas that the commissioner would have as duties, your suggestion is that we make sure that we include some of these areas. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm not sure that it isn't there in sort of a skeletal version already, but we heard this in the town halls, we've heard this from the public. I feel confident that this person would pick up that ball and run with it, but I don't see any problem or any issue with taking what we're talking about now and making sure that it's reflected clearly the way to the depth we've just talked about in the job description. And I think that's the way we capture that.
And you're not suggesting that the climate commissioner or climate and environment commissioner take over the comprehensive plan?
Of course, no, it's not. That's not a role. I mean, there's no space for that.
Okay. Any more discussion? Okay. So when we report out to the full commission, what would you like to say about the build out analysis? Because this was something that was spoken to at a couple different town hall meetings. It seemed like there were several people that brought this item up and asked us to consider it. So how would you like us to report out what our committee is doing or where our committee is on this item? And don't everybody raise their hand at the same time. Yes, Dick and Kevin, did you want to say something after Dick? Go ahead, Dick.
Yeah, I think we could explain what we've just been talking about, that the commission deals with the structure of county government. So we can't really deal with that in the charter, but for people who are concerned with this, we think there's a case to be made, but that by creating the Office of Climate and Environment and having an elected official in there, there is a place to house that concern for a build out analysis and regulations, and that's something this office could do that currently we hear from the county departments that might otherwise be doing it. They simply don't have the time or the staff to do it.
Got it. Okay. Does that meet everyone's need?
Anne Marie.
Oh yes, Liz. I'm sorry, I can't see you.
No, that's okay.
Oh, you're blank. That's why. I was looking for you. Where'd you go? Okay, go ahead.
You'd be looking at my car ceiling. So
yeah, go ahead.
So, Dick, I appreciate what you're saying, and I wonder if we can add, just the concept that come from in terms of acknowledging to the public that we heard them loud and clear, and like them, we're in favor of seeing that occurs, and to invite them to stay involved in the development and getting the office of the OCE passed. That kind of, just so it's very affirmative of the need to pay attention to build out, and
Liz, I think we just lost you
Yeah.
there, but I got the drift of it. Go ahead. Did someone else want to say something? Or
Hanging on her last word.
yes. Well, hopefully she'll be able to come back. Yes, Bob.
Would it be helpful for us as the commission, if this position is created, would it be helpful for us to send the commissioner, the new commissioner, a memo or a letter, I'm thinking of a memo, telling that commissioner of some of our concerns? That is just kind of, it's not telling the person what to do or anything, but that this came up or that came up or that came up.
Kevin, you got your hand up?
So I think the way we do that, Bob, and it gets back to Dick's point on how we address the public who mentioned this to us too. And look, I want to be very clear. I think a build out analysis will provide us some very important information, which will allow us to better plan going forward across the board, be it environmental protections or just how and where you're going to put a home or a business. Actually, the latter less so. But my point is, I think the way we do that is in our findings, we state that, just like one of the findings we have is that they will do a climate, how do we phrase it? We're doing a climate analysis.
Right. And that's not in findings. That's actually one of the duties.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you could put in one of the duties that, they conduct a build out analysis and I would say in collaboration with CDPD.
Right.
Because this isn't exclusively within their bailiwick. I think it's jointly between them and the planning department. And so I would say, and then so for that, I think it is a should and not a shall. I think you need to say they should collaborate with the community development and planning department to conduct a build out analysis. And then that's in there. And then go back to people who raised this very important issue and we're able to say, yes, this is a function that we're assigning to this new office. Let's get the office created first, and then let's let them do great work. And Bob, you said earlier he or she, I think it's a she.
Okay, guys. So Liz, go ahead. I'm sorry, we lost you there for a minute.
that's just one last thing. Is it Liz Lovelet who just got us the funding for this build out research?
I
Kevin?
don't know about that.
Yeah, so the it's already, as I've got it correctly, the money has just recently been approved for us to do this, which is, really excellent news. So we're
Wow.
at least a little bit ahead of the curve on that one, and Kevin might be able to speak more clearly to that. Thank you.
Wow. Okay. That's great. That's really cool. Okay. Yes, Kevin.
I was just going to say, Commissioner Lafferty is correct, I believe. And if I remember correctly, that actually, some of the discussion came from our county council working with Senator Lovelet and some others. And I believe community development and planning is already looking at this too. So I think this new department will have to work with them to make it and to be part of that, because some of their input will be critical. But I think some of this may also be moving forward.
Great. That's perfect. Okay, Dick, go ahead.
I have a question. Have we not been told, or is my memory faulty, that the CRC, as the CRC, cannot campaign for any of the issues that we put on the ballot? Is that correct? It has to be a separate entity?
Oh, actually, Maureen brought that up at the CRC meeting last week, and I don't know what the answer to that is.
Okay, just a
But it,
cautionary note.
yeah,
ahead,
but
I'm sorry.
it's something that we'll all need to be aware of.
Right, and the reason I raise it is to Liz's point about, making it loud and clear to, people who raised this in the town hall, that we need to know the answer to that before we do something like that,
Right.
because we don't want to step on our own toes
Oh, okay. I
and
see where
cause a
the,
problem.
yeah, the ones on June 1st and 2nd.
Right.
Okay. Yes, Liz.
And that's part of the reason that I have been pushing so hard in any of the subcommittees I'm on, that whatever language we develop, the community can hear themselves. They know they've been heard, they recognize the language, they can hear themselves in what we put forward, because they're the ones who are actually going to have to do the work of engaging, enrolling people to pass these things.
Sure. Okay. Do we feel like we have come full circle on this and we're ready to talk a little bit more about the takeaways from the CRC meeting? Sharon and
Yes.
Liz, are you good on this? Okay. So if you can go back in time to last week, thoughts from the meeting, concerns? Yes, Sharon.
Yeah, definitely concerns from some of the people that seemed really to feel angry and threatened by this new office that we're proposing, and what we can do to speak to those fears. And that's all I really have. It's a concern. I mean, I doubt, that there's a majority of people that would really be dead set against this office, but I think, we need to speak to concerns that are out there.
Okay. And how were you thinking that would take place?
I have no idea. Well, actually, yeah. I mean, part of the thing is just really letting people know that we've heard them, and addressing, like I know that we are not responsible for finding funding for this office, but I think we should be engaging in discussion about that anyway. I mean, I certainly, people may disagree with that, but I think it would help us if we could speak to that to some degree.
Okay. Kevin?
I'll reverse on my points. My second point, I'm going to make my first, because Sharon brought it up. On the funding, we need to keep in mind that, and it was some of the commissioners, some of our own CRC members were putting forward language to recommend that the salary review commission give our elected officials a raise. That happened before that vote took place.
Right.
There was a good portion of this commission who was saying, give them a raise. The salary review commission just gave our elected officials a massive raise. And I'm not saying it wasn't justified. I would question the timing, since it's in the same period when we have furloughed a ton of our county employees. So at the same time, you're telling public employees they're going to get less money, you give yourself a raise. I don't like that. There's my vent. My main point, however, is that raise for our elected officials costs the county over $250,000. And they just did it. And everybody's saying, awesome, including members of this commission. So I am less concerned about $100,000 for this individual person versus this fairly significant raise from about $90,000 to 100 and something for every elected official that we just did. And then their benefits go up and so on. Their PERS, their retirement program goes up, all of it. And again, I'm not saying by any means the electeds didn't deserve it. It's just interesting that how some of us, I'll put it on us, some of us keep bringing up, oh my God, how are we going to find this money for this person? And in the same breath, you're saying, oh, but let's give all these other people a big old raise. So let's be consistent. And the consistency is there, which is when we have priorities, which I think making the salaries of the elected officials comparable to the appointed officials, and also making sure the elected officials had a more comparable salary to even their high-level employees. I think that is a priority. And I think it was wise. Again, I totally question the timing. But that was made a priority. So if the voters feel this is a priority, the county will pay for it. And I think we need to, I'm tired of the conversation. I'm sorry. I don't even remember what my other point was.
Okay, Sharon, go ahead.
We can be tired of the conversation, but that doesn't mean the conversation is going to go away. And I think, it can be that there's a few people who are really seething and really angry and really feel threatened that can have a lot of influence on social media and in the town halls. I just think we need to consider, everybody's voice here and just not hope it'll just go away.
Well, I think that's a good point. Kevin and then Liz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I remember my other point, which was exactly that even if it's a vocal minority, we need to listen and we need to have communication. I will say that this week I reached over 300 because I've been keeping track. People have now reached out to me saying, oh my gosh, this is an amazing idea. We're so excited you're considering it with regard to the elected official and the new department. And I've heard from, including the town halls, I think 7 people, the opposite. Now, I do not want that to be a lightning rod, which it has been in the past when I've made comments like that, for everybody who's opposed to something to start freaking out, because it should not be a competition as who has more. To Commissioner Brew's point, we need to listen to everybody. And I think we are. I think we're doing a good job. And to answer your specific question, Sharon, how will we do that? I think one is, and back to Madam Chair, your original question of where do we have thoughts on the previous meeting on Wednesday. My biggest thought is that we need to clarify, we need to be more clearly articulate on what we're putting forward. And I think we're going to have that. And one of the reasons why you probably announced before I got on, if you didn't, we're going to delay the presentation from this subcommittee by a week. So we have more time. One of the reasons to do that is make sure we can go through Randy's thoughts on our position and address any issues that were raised there. The other is so that we can have a very clear and concise presentation, not just for our commission, but for the public. And so I think that will help a great deal, because one of the most irate people in the comments, in the public comment last Wednesday, was obviously not aware of what we're putting forward, because his concerns that he raised, I don't believe will be impacted whatsoever by this. And so we need to do a better job of articulating what we're doing. The second way we're going to do that is during the town halls, which are only half hour.
Okay. And yes, I agree. And I think one of the things that Sharon and I have talked about offline is the need for people to understand that a lot of our focus is actually on the county itself. And yes, we're going to be collaborating with a lot of different groups and organizations, but our first priority is really to try to bring our county in line with where we need to be. Sharon, you wanted to make another point?
Yeah, I think as long as people are afraid that this is going to cause them to lose income, we're going to have pushback, and we might even find we have some pushback from people who generally support these concerns and ideas. So just something to be aware of. We're going to need to speak to that however we can. And I just want to say that along these lines, we are going to have a short time that we're going to be speaking with Rick Hughes this Friday afternoon. And I got to talk to him one-on-one over at the Madrona Room here on Orcas last week, when we were both there for things relating to the vaccinations. But I got to talk with him, and I was inspired to set up this meeting because he was feeling like he had the sense that we did not want to speak with him, and that's part of the reason he was so upset. I wouldn't say it's the whole reason, but part of the reason. And big piles of hail just fell off my roof. That's so weird.
Well,
but anyway, so we're going to speak with him, and I think it would be valuable to just hear
right.
what he has to say.
And I just, if I could just insert here, the commission has heard from we heard from our electeds, we've heard from departments head, we've had a couple outside speakers at the commission, but we really came to the conclusion as a commission that we needed to kind of move forward and start reporting on what our groups were doing, because we all did not know and we were getting into a crunch time. So that was my understanding of why we didn't bring in the former commissioners or council members and ask them specific questions. And I know that in the past, former council members had been interviewed. So I don't know exactly where Rick's concern is, but we'll talk with him more on Friday. Kevin, you have your hand up. Liz, do you have your hand up? So let's go Kevin and then Liz.
Just let me reiterate what Anne Marie said. So I had actually reached out to Rick and said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about presenting to the commission. The next commission meeting was when we had a number of commissioners, some of which are now, making similar comments to your own, Sharon, say, we need to be done with presentations. And so there were actually 4 other people that I had lined up. Rick was one of them that I was going to have speak to us. But the broad consensus from the full commission was that we needed to move forward. And I actually think that was a wise move, because here we are 2 weeks out and we still have a lot of work to do.
Okay, let's go ahead and Liz, you were going to say something, and then we should kind of move into the stage where we're talking about some of the other actual written feedback we've gotten. And I was going to go through some of that. I outlined some. Okay, Liz, go ahead.
So my thought is that it's incumbent on all of us as commissioners to begin to do what we can to pivot the conversation when we're looking at the cost of doing this, and to begin to have the conversation be about the cost if we don't do this. So I think acknowledging that we are all concerned and share the concern about fiscal health for our county. And the bigger pressing concern in that conversation is, what does it look like both economically and environmentally if we don't do this? And the economic fallout of not doing this is catastrophic. So I just think to let the public know that, we're looking at that fiscal problem directly, squarely, constantly.
Right.
And the bigger price tag is in not doing something.
Right. Okay. Anyone else? So you'll remember when we first began our conversation about this, we created a working title. And we agreed that it would be a working title. And we came up with the Climate and Environment Officer and the Climate and Environment Office. And that has been raised as, I'm sorry, Sharon?
Did we not use the word commissioner? Did we go with the word officer?
Did I say something different?
You said officer.
I'm sorry, I was looking at this other sheet. So someone else, you're right, we came up with a commissioner, and it's been suggested that is it appropriate to create an office as well as the head of the entity? And is the title office and officer where we want to be? Are we comfortable with that? Because those were initially raised. Yes, Kevin.
You said officer again.
There was the question.
I didn't mean to say officer. I'm sorry. I'm looking at my outline.
So there's the question of the word commissioner, and it was not a legal concern. Randy felt that some people would be confused if we said commissioner. I actually don't agree with that. We have a public lands commissioner, which is what we base this off of. We have numerous other commissioners, and just calling it an officer or a director is actually what you have in an appointed department. So I actually am opposed to that. I actually think commissioner makes a lot of sense. And we no longer have our San Juan County commissioners. We now have council members. So I think this makes a lot of sense, and there's precedent for it in numerous other governments.
Yes, Bob.
I served in the state government of Tennessee for a number of years. All of the cabinet level people who were right under the governor were commissioners. The commissioner of health, et cetera. And that is true all through the, well, there are many states in the country where that is true, that the commissioner level people are the heads of those departments. The commissioner heads the department, but that's my experience.
Okay. And last night I heard a report on the news about Arizona and their elections, and the person that was being interviewed was a superintendent. And I did live in Arizona at one time, so I know Maricopa County and stuff, and they kept calling him a superintendent. And I kept thinking about the school systems, and I was like, so I finally came to the conclusion that this was like the title of people that were on their elections commission in Maricopa County. And so one of the other suggestions was a superintendent. And I think that would make things more confusing. Kevin, you had a comment?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that the other issue is, I think this will be confusing for a short time because it's brand new. It's just like, actually Randy just the other day in his presentation, and I do it all the time, I still call the county council the county commission.
Commissioners.
So when you make a change, it takes a while for people to get for it being the norm. And so we're creating a new entity. There will be some confusion appropriately. And then 5 years from now, everybody's going to talk about, oh my God, how great it is that, when she came out and did all this stuff, that commissioner was kicking butt, and everybody's going to get it. But right now it's brand new.
Okay. So I just wanted to get us back over there to make sure that it was not a working title for us anymore, and that's really where we are. And did anybody else have anything? Yes, Kevin.
I'm sorry. The other thing, and I've actually emailed and written to Randy, but not heard back yet, and called too, but not heard back. I know that he's got some court cases too. Courts are back in session again, post-COVID. But I am unclear, and if somebody on this subcommittee cares to share with me their thoughts of clarity, I'm unclear what the concern was between an office and an officer. It is very clear to me legally, the Charter Review Commission can create an office, the executive position, and it can create the officer, and it can create the office, the department. And when I look at every other elected office in San Juan County, they are known as the office of the prosecuting attorney, the office of the judge, the office of the auditor. And then the separation is, then you have departments, and there's a department of community development and planning. And the difference is elected versus appointed. And so when we first came up with this, I thought we were perfectly in line with the current county structure, and I'm not seeing the difference there. So, but that was raised, and I'm curious if I look forward to the conversation with Randy, but I don't get it.
Okay. And as I understood it, it's the assessor's office. It's the office of the prosecuting attorney, right? Does Mylene, does she go by office, the auditor's office? So we are being consistent. Did anyone else have anything? Yes, Bob.
If it would be helpful in this discussion, if it's needful, I would make a motion that we remove the temporary fill-in status of the names office and commissioner and make them permanent, and then go on with the next thing. That's my motion.
Okay. Do I have a second? Kyle. Okay. Any more discussion? All those, did anyone want to say anything? Okay.
Would you just restate the motion one more time?
The motion is that we, and what was the language, Anne Marie? Not a fill-in or
It was a working title.
Working title. That we
Yeah.
remove the status of the name of this new officer, which is commissioner, and the name of the what we're creating, which is the Office of Climate and Environment. Remove the status of working title and make those the permanent titles.
Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second, we've had discussion. Do we want to go ahead and vote on that now? Is everybody supportive of that? Or if you're not supportive, let me know. So I don't see Liz, I don't see Bob.
Are we voting? Are we
Yeah, we're
voting?
voting.
Okay, yeah.
No, no. Oh, we are?
Yeah, is that
I
okay?
thought they were discussing with their
Well, I-
hands.
Discussion.
Oh, you want to discuss some
Yeah.
more? Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. So I'm actually reading the website. So I've gone through the assessor and the auditor. I'm looking at others right now. They say the way they describe it, let's look at the treasurer and see if it's the same way. Yeah, so they say, and maybe this is what Randy was getting to. We're saying the Office of Climate and Environment. And what the exact wording is, they say the treasurer's office. So if we are going to be exactly correct or exactly consistent, although I like it the way it is, and I don't think there's a problem. And I know that legally there's not a problem. However, if you're going to be totally consistent, you would say the Climate and Environment Commissioner's Office. Which I think
Oh, gosh.
no one's going to say it that way anyway. They're just going to say the Climate and Environment Office, the Office of Climate and Environment. So I don't see an issue there. If there is some legal trip up, we can revisit it with the full CRC or when we wrap up everything. But I think it's good as is. I just wanted to clarify that
Okay,
auditor, everybody says the Office of.
okay. Okay, Dick.
Kevin, I got a question for you. Do you also object to using the title either officer or official? It seems to me if it's the Office of Climate Environment, it could be the climate officer.
I think it needs to be commissioner. I think commissioner adds value to it. Officer also has, it overlaps. Is that a police officer? I mean, it just, and so I think there's even more confusion there actually. And
Official?
I'm not thinking of office being an officer. That's not in my head anyway. I think of the Office of Climate Environment is for me, I think, oh, that's the department. And then I'd say, and it's headed by the commissioner.
Okay.
Do we vote?
Are we ready to vote? More discussion? Oh, good to go?
Call the
Okay.
question.
Okay, so all those in favor? Show of hands. Okay, and all those opposed? Anybody abstaining? Tom's going to abstain, okay. That's what you want versus opposed, right, Tom? You want to abstain?
Yes.
Title, excellent, okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I just want to say on the record how excited I am that Tom has moved from abstention to
or move to abstention from O.
opposition to abstention on one of our votes. That really means a lot. Thank you.
Okay. Moving right along, I have started to look at the administrative powers and the duties and how we are going to try to expressly state those. And I'll go in and see if I can, in the comp plan, if there's an area that will relate to the previous conversation we had. And I will try to get those back to you all probably by Monday, see if that works. The next, so then that was the next item that was brought to our attention, was that we needed to really have a lot of specificity in the administrative powers. And that we shouldn't be just saying related to the mission or, covered by the mission. So we'll see what we can do with that. The next item, so that's, I'm kind of going through a checklist. If everybody has anything else as we're moving along, please, put your hand up or jump in. The next one had to do with code enforcement. And there are other counties that are charter counties that have language on code enforcement. So we're kind of looking at using some of that. And we also need to kind of fine tune the code enforcement. So it really is, it's more related to our local issues versus the state issues, unless we're delegated that. And Is all this making sense to everybody? Or am I? Yes, Sharon. And Kyle,
You-
looks like Kyle may have to skip out on us.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to. Did you say that they had code enforcement in their charters or in their comp plans?
No, in their charters.
Their charters.
Yeah. There's some language I think we can use. Yes, Bob.
Um, maybe Kevin knows the answer to this, but and maybe everyone does, but me. But do we have another committee somewhere that is of the commission that is dealing with the question of the lack of the county's ability to enforce because there aren't enough people to do it? Everybody know what I'm talking about?
Right, the enforcement
That's a
arm.
big problem. And if we are not addressing it, goodness, don't we need to? Because wow, that's a huge need. I'm kind of asking that question of Kevin, really.
Okay, so Kevin, do you want to think about that and then respond, or would you like to? You don't want to respond at all?
Don't want to think about it.
Yes, Kevin, and then Sharon.
Yes, we're doing that. We have enforcement in our write-up right now, and
Yeah.
one that the prosecutor asked us, he suggested. So remember, the prosecutor, we get to do what we want. What the prosecutor's trying to do is give us good advice so that we're on sound legal footing, and I think he's been great at that. So maybe too great sometimes, but we have enforcement, partial enforcement in our draft. And one of the things that he suggested was that we need more clarity on how that's going to work. And so the way I wrote laws for 15 years at the county and the state level is every time you write a law, you are very prescriptive of every law. So if you were creating a department like this, or an office like this, an agency is how I would normally think of it, you are prescriptive with what their jurisdiction is and what it isn't. And so I think it's very important that we outline in our report next week that this climate environment commissioner will have authority under, and we cite the statutes. We say their department, their office will have authority under the jurisdiction of the Shoreline Master Program, under the Critical Areas Ordinance. Shall not, however, under the Growth Management Act, because there's some stuff, you want to keep in the other department. And right now we have one code enforcement officer who is totally overworked and really trying to do a great job. And so the lack of code enforcement is not a lack of passion or commitment from our staff. It is a lack of prioritization from our county. The fact that we don't have 2 or 3 of these people. And so what this will do is divide the duties so that one code enforcement officer is really doing, the building inspections and such. The other will be doing the environmental stuff that we're talking about. And so the shorter answer, which Bob, if you're getting to know me, is impossible to get from me. But the shorter answer is yes, the committee dealing with that is us. And we're hoping to have that much better defined over the coming days and look forward to bouncing it off you.
Yeah. And I don't know to what extent we will say we're not doing certain things, because what we're not doing is going to be so much bigger than what we're focusing on. So,
sorry, Madam Chair, as I was saying that, I was like, wait, we're not doing that. No.
yeah, because that would just be, like we're not doing. Anyway, Sharon, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just to say that when I was talking with Rick Hughes, what he said is he's not in favor of creating this new commission, obviously, but he says, why don't you just hire a couple more code enforcement people?
Sure.
He said he would be in favor of that, is what he said.
Yeah, well, he had an opportunity for 12 years, but aside from that,
We actually do.
I understand there are a lot of competing priorities for people, and we've talked about that a lot. Dick, did you want to say something? No, he's all good. Okay. Then the next item that was in the lineup was the authority to adopt rules and ordinances and statutes. And the prosecuting attorney has given us some language that says the official may adopt rules and orders as permitted under applicable ordinances and statutes, provided each rule or order is not in conflict with the authority delegated to the officer. And I didn't know where people were on that one. I see Kevin's hand. That is under number G.
Could you read that again, Madam Chair?
For sure, and I'll go a little slower. The official may adopt rules and orders as permitted under applicable ordinances and statutes, provided each rule or order is not in conflict with the authority delegated the office.
Well, shouldn't it be not outside the authority rather than in conflict with the authority? And the first word, did you call him the officer? Should it
Well,
be
that's how
her?
that's how.
Shouldn't she be called the commissioner?
Yeah,
Right.
he is.
I'm just giving you what he proposed to us and getting your feedback on it, but that's a good one. And you're saying not in conflict. What was your other word for it?
Outside the authority.
It's not outside the authority.
It's not going to be in conflict with his own authority, but it could be outside his authority.
Okay, and Kevin, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so generally I'm in favor of a version of this language. I think Bob's suggestion is a good one, but I actually think that the prosecutor has given us a good reference point here for us to put in there, and I don't see any problem with it. It does underscore for me the importance of us being very prescriptive on what the authority of the commissioner, not the officer, the commissioner is. And so I think we need to detail out what that authority is. And then a line like this, though, then kind of just says the same thing more bluntly.
Right. Okay, Bob?
Madam Chair, could I ask Kevin a question?
Sure.
Kevin, do you think that line of thinking means that we can't add something like and such other powers as shall be commensurate with his or her authority under this amendment or under this charter?
I think that's fine. I think we're wordsmithing it a bit. I think,
Well-
I think the prosecutor, he spent a lot of time thinking about this and has suggested some language, and as long as there's not a problem with it, I don't think that it puts too tight of parameters on the commissioner or their office. I think what it does is it forces us, which is another point that he raised, which was that we had a lack of clarity, and we were kind of saying, we want him to do this. And he was saying, okay, well then you got to describe what this is. And so I think what he's saying here is that we need to clarify that obviously, and this is, for me, this is kind of a no-brainer. It's duh. Like, of course the person's not going to do anything that's outside of their own authority. The county council or the prosecuting attorney or the attorney general would tell him to take a hike. And so, but I think having it in there helps, frankly, to Sharon's point earlier, alleviate some concerns from others. It also underscores the other point Randy is trying to get to us, which is we need to be more prescriptive. And so if this says we have to abide by the authority vested in this person, then we in the charter better clearly state what we want to vest in this person's authority.
Can I respond?
Yeah, go for it.
I'll just say that in my experience in state government, I've never seen an agency that was put together that did not have a clause like that in its enabling legislation.
You want to run that clause by me one more time, just so I can take a note on it?
Well, it would be something like, and the commissioner shall have such other powers as are necessary to let's see, to properly exercise the authority she is given under this
Okay.
amendment.
Okay, that's good. And okay, so I'm gonna because we're gonna break for, well, I have a few more minutes. So then the next item has to do with the State Environmental Policy Act. And there were two issues in there, and one issue was, does this mean county permits? And will the review and comment occur after the permit is issued? And my first reaction was, yes, it means county permits as well as public permits or private permits. And it should begin at the beginning. And when I went to the SEPA page for the state, one of the first things that's there is the checklist. And it says government agencies use the SEPA environmental checklist to determine whether a proposal will have significant adverse environmental impacts. And then it goes on to identify for the permit seeker how the measure, different ways the measure might be able to avoid or minimize impact. So it seems like we'd want this person, I mean, my first reaction was we'd want them in with the draft EISs, but we also want them to review and comment probably on the checklist as well, so that they would be in the beginning on some of these things with the Department of Community Development. That was just my thought. Kevin, and then Dick.
Dick can go first. I'll wait.
I think that's critical because in my observation, and I suspect it's a time crunch thing again, there are too many cases where the county, for those of you who maybe aren't as familiar or don't remember the SEPA process, the applicant submits a checklist. Sometimes the county creates it, but and it's on the basis of that checklist that they issue a declaration of no significance, a modified declaration of significance, or a declaration of significance, which really means an EIS. And I think it's critical that this office and this person be in on the checklist, because too often that checklist gets issued for the decision as a DNS, and then you wait to see if somebody objects. And that's not a good way to do things. And like I say, I think it's a time issue probably for them, but this office needs to be in from the beginning at the checklist.
Kevin, did you want to add anything there, or you?
Dick just knocked it out of the park. He should have pointed before he hit that.
Okay. Any other comments on that one? So we'll work on some language there. It may be that we just add something like these comments shall include comments on the environmental checklist and prior to the SEPA determination by the CDC, and then and during the comment period for the draft EIS on climate and environment related issues or impacts. The next item, and I'm just going through the actual document that we got, has to do with, it's number I, and it deals with coordination of the Emergency Management Act. And let me just get the piece of paper that I want to use here. So what we said, here, where did I've got a small desk and a lot of paper. So we originally, maybe he has it in his, let's see. We say, it's being recommended that we coordinate with the Emergency Management Office versus, here's mine. We said, cooperate with San Juan County Department of Emergency Management during disaster or emergency situation. And this was another one where we had, as it relates to the mission of the office. And the recommendation is that we coordinate on emergency management functions at the local level. And it seemed to me that might be okay. I just kind of wanted to get other people's take on that. I think that what I remember from the federal government was that we did emergency management plans that gave everybody a role. And I don't know if we also want to have our person, involved in the development of that. So I've said enough. Kevin and then Bob.
Madam Chair, could you read that suggested language again, please?
So the recommendation is, it says this language should be changed to show that the officer coordinate on emergency management functions at the local level. The functions this officer will be responsible for will be determined by, and here he refers to the emergency management plan. The plan can be the document that limits this officer's involvement in items the officer considers to be related to the mission, and in that way safely omit the language regarding the mission of the office. And what we had said was cooperate with the San Juan County Department of Emergency Management during disaster or emergency situations as it relates to the mission of the office. I didn't want us to be squeezed out. A lot of times when you're in a disaster or an emergency situation, certain priorities get pushed aside. And I understand why that happens, but I don't think that we necessarily just want to throw everything out the window. That's where kind of I was on this one. Go ahead, Bob, and then Kevin.
This is sort of subtle, but those two words, cooperate to me is more passive. You sit there, and if the person asks you to do something, you step forward and help out. Coordinate means, to me, it means you step out there and you look around and see who else is out there, and you coordinate things with them. So if you really want to talk about involvement, I would use coordinate rather than just
okay.
cooperate.
So that is the prosecutor's recommendation. So that would be good. Okay, we're good on that. Anybody else? Kevin, did you want to say something on that or no? Okay.
I think what Randy is trying to clarify is that it's important for us not to overstep our role. And I think he's trying to add language to clarify that. I actually think that change the word to coordinate, as Bob suggested, and then keep your language, because I think it clarifies that, COVID was an emergency management situation where Brendan Cowan, who's our lead of that department, who does an incredible job, stepped up and had to do 1,000 things.
Right.
This department would not be involved in that whatsoever.
Right.
If there's an oil spill, Brendan Cowan will also be creating an emergency management team, and this department would have to be part of that. And so I think that's kind of the delineation that you're spelling out with your language, and I think it's appropriate.
Okay. It sounds on the same page. Everybody else okay? No more comments. The next item has to do with contract authority. And what we had said was develop and sign contracts for mission-related services for San Juan County. And the concern is that it relates to the budget process and the legislative authority of the council. So it seems like, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Kevin, and then Bob.
I think the concern that's being raised is just the way we've written it is maybe juxtaposed with the way the county works. I think what we're trying to say is that this person will be able to seek and receive outside funding, just like a
No, this is the contract one. This is the one where they can sign contracts that are related to their area.
So how does it work right? So same argument then. How does it work right now with the Environmental Resources Division? When they go out and they get a big grant and they sign a contract to do a bunch of work, or they employ an outside contractor to do the work for them, like restore a beach or something, and they hire Jim Johannesson from Bellingham, I think Public Works signs that contract, or does the auditor sign it? I don't think every single contract, well, when I was a county commissioner and a county council member, I surely did not sign every single work order for every contract. That's a office or departmental function.
Yeah,
And
I don't.
whatever it is, I think is what we keep it. We're just adding it for this and clarifying.
Dick, did you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, when I was in the county, which granted was shortly after the last ice age, but when I was there, that was the standard procedure. Was if it was within your budget, you could contract because you were responsible for your budget. But I agree with Kevin. Whatever it is for everybody else is what it should be for this office.
Well, and that might be a good way to resolve it, is to say what is in the budget for the Climate and Environment
I think,
Commissioner's office. Yeah.
so I apologize. I do not have time to do this. I will try to make time, but I'm probably going to blow it, so I shouldn't commit. But a quick conversation with Mylene about how this works with, for instance, her department or the
Right.
department.
That would be good.
All that needs to happen.
Okay, so you'll take that one? That'd be good. Then there's concern about the lobbying and the proposed, what we had was, we had influence, educate, and advocate for the mission of the office and participate in key discussions at the county, state, and federal level, including relevant legislative bodies, advisory bodies, and commissions. And the proposal is that it should be more worded that we're working with San Juan County Council to develop plans for commenting on state, federal plans, programs, proposed legislation, which has an influence in the climate and environment area. Yes. Comments?
Strongly opposed to the language. And what I'd like to point out is that for the 10 years that I was in the state Senate, our prosecuting attorney, our assessor, our auditor, our treasurer, our judge were down in Olympia directly under IRS law lobbying me. And so I don't see why we would change that for this official by any means. I actually think it's a really important function. And I look forward to any deliberations on this point. I actually went back through my calendar and counted how many times certain people were down there. And the other elected officials were actually down in my office far more often than our county council.
Okay. Anybody else? Dick?
Well, and same point. I would say whatever is good for the other elected officials should apply to this office.
Okay. So maybe you could ask Mylene about that as well. And Liz has her hand up, and Sharon, there's something about when I look at you, I keep thinking you've got your hand up, but you don't. Okay, Liz, go
I'm
ahead.
typing. Both my hands are on my keyboard.
Okay. Yes, Liz.
The only point I wanted to make in regards to whatever is accurate for the other offices should apply to this one is that don't we want this one to have a stronger educational component than most of the other offices?
Right, and
So I don't know
probably
if we wanna-
stronger outreach too.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to pull that out separate and then have it say, what applies to the goose applies to the gander, whatever.
Well, we actually have that as a separate bullet related to provide education and outreach in concert with San Juan County community organizations to further the mission of the office. And that's
Okay.
kind of under that.
Okay, yeah. I think
Bob,
that's
did you
good
have
enough then.
something else?
I am strongly in favor of this person lobbying like crazy. However, it is my experience in state government. I want to say this, and I'm sure that Kevin knows all about this, but at least in Tennessee, I would assume also here in Washington, there are laws about anybody who spends more than a certain amount of time lobbying state legislators needs to be a registered lobbyist. Okay, and that's a whole thing.
Got it.
And Kevin's got his hand raised about that.
Kevin, yeah, go for it.
So there are different lobbying rules for an elected official. For instance, when I was a state senator, I would go back to DC regularly and sit down with Patty Murray or Maria Cantwell to talk about an issue. And that was not considered lobbying. That was considered me doing my job advocating for the citizens that I represented.
I see.
However, I would still not use the word lobbying. I would say that we are actually, and I think the way Anne Marie or Madam Chair read it is that we are advocating and educating. And I think that's an important discrepancy. And I would keep that language and not use the word lobbying. Also, lobbying has negative
It
connotations.
does.
And so I don't think we should go there, but I
Yeah,
think,
we don't have lobbying in ours. We have influence, educate, and advocate.
yeah, I don't even think we need to say influence. I think advocate and educate is good.
Okay. The next one has to do with accepting gifts. And
Anne Marie, can we go back just to confirm that we're all in agreement to drop?
oh, I'm
influence?
sorry. Yes. Liz, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Can we go back and just put that we're all in agreement to drop the word influence and just have it be advocate and educate, or educate and advocate?
Sure. Is everybody okay with that? That we drop the word influence? Okay, looks like we're good to go. Okay. So the next one has to do with accepting gifts. What time is it? And it says accepting gifts is a legislative activity. We have
It's a little puzzling.
I'm looking for where this actual language is in here. You know, I don't, where did I have that? Let me see if it's up higher. Review. Develop county plans. I
Madam
thought we had something in here where we were accepting gifts, but I'm not seeing it real quickly. Yes.
I need somebody, and I apologize. I have something going on and I'm in extreme pain. So I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I'm grumpy. And hopefully I'll be there this evening. We'll see. On this one and whatever my last one was, I need folks to just send me a text or an email reminding me. But on this one too, I would be willing to go to Mylene and say, how does it work for the other elected officials? However it
Okay.
works for them is what we're going to do, because that's already been put through statute.
Okay.
I think what we were trying to get at is that if somebody says, hey, you know, if we're saying, gosh, we want to do this report, we need to hire an outside consultant, we don't have the funds, and, you know, what's her name? Gladia, the Whittier Foundation. If the Whittier Foundation were to say, hey, we'd like to give you $10,000 toward this or $50,000 toward this, which has happened in the past, by the way, with that foundation and another elected official. It's how we got the Guardian, our $450,000 sheriff boat. Not all of it. A lot of it was Homeland Security, but a lot of it was gifts too. So however that works, we want it to be able to work for this individual as well. So we just need to figure that out. And
Okay.
the one was, I don't even remember it. I've already lost it. So if people could just email me or text.
I'll send you an email. The three I have is how we interact.
Three.
Yeah, I have contract authority, lobbying, and accepting gifts.
Lobbying is settled. I don't need to talk to anybody on that.
Okay.
Trust me, I know the law on that really well.
Okay. So you're going to do how we accept gifts and how we do contracts.
Okay.
We're differentiating between grants and gifts, right?
Yes. And one is, you know, and I understand where he's coming from. You know, you wouldn't want, well, I'm not even going to go there. I'm not going to give an example because it's just, I need someone to help me with the cultural resources piece. And that means to look at the Department of Anthropology and Historic Preservation. We've gotten a citation from the prosecuting attorney, and I need to have someone help me figure out how the county comes into play there so that we can be very focused on what we say. And it was also recommended at the hearing or the commission meeting that we have a finding on the relationship of our indigenous people and San Juan County, the relationship there. And I didn't know if another group, maybe the preamble group or the justice group, is already doing that. Yes. Bob, I'm sorry.
I'm totally befuddled as to how, I mean, I think our cultural heritage and our relationship with the indigenous original folks is very important. It's very important for us to know about and to honor that. But I'm scratching my head about the climate and environment, what that's got to do with it. Somebody the other day, I asked that question. I said, well, you can dig in the ground and find things. So yeah, I don't know. Doesn't.
So on most, and Kevin's
gonna,
yeah, why don't you go ahead? I was just going to say, I'm just looking at something at my own house, and I know that we're going to have some level of an archaeological issue. So go ahead, Kevin.
I'll be quick, and then I apologize. I have to get off the call. Under environmental resources is where you deal with cultural resources often because you're dealing with the land. And so, for instance, they go out to build Semiyamu golf course and they find hundreds of skeletal remains and they realize it's a sacred Indian burial ground. And the people that were out there to do the environmental review then say, oh, I got to call Bob in my department who does the cultural review. And they're knowledgeable on it. And that's the way the county's already set up too. And so,
okay.
So that's why it overlaps. And so the cultural piece is critical. I think we need to figure out the language on this and we need to do it appropriately. And I apologize, I have to jump.
Okay.
I'll see you guys later.
And this is already included in the environmental resource program, which is why we even have it in here, because we didn't want to pull that one out. Okay. Yes, Dick.
Well, and just, I mean, we're going to come back to this, but because it's already in the environmental resource program and it's already in state law, I'm sort of with Bob about why are we even bringing it up as a separate issue? It's already there.
Right. Okay. So your point is, what Randy has said is he would really like us to kind of define, how does he word it? Please look carefully at the resources at the Department of Archaeological and Historic Preservation when identifying the delegation of administrative duties to this position involving cultural resources, and make sure you're delegating administrative powers that already exist and are not in conflict with the powers assigned to other state agencies, such as the Department of Archaeological and Historic Preservation.
Yeah. I mean, that's another way of saying what I think what I'm saying is,
okay.
Why are we not just.
And I think we just hire them. We ask them to come and look, but I could be wrong. I'll talk.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll ask Kendra. Yes, Bob.
Does that mean there is already in existence a department at the state level or wherever that,
Right.
that the person can call when they find the skeletal remains?
Right.
Well, then,
Yes.
That's it.
let's avoid it. Can we stay out of the business?
Well, we have to
Ooh.
have somebody at the state level that makes the contact, or at the county level that makes the contact. And right now that person is in the Environmental Resources Division.
And
Go for it.
well, and that was my point is, I don't want to belabor this, but that was my point, that isn't this just a matter of the only thing we need to do is articulate who or what position would be responsible for that. And if in fact the Environmental Resources Division is going to come into this office, then that function would come with it, to my mind. Now, maybe we just need to state that that's the case.
Okay. And then if everybody's good on that one, there was a suggestion that we drop the employee assumptions that Kyle had put together. And there were some thoughts on that by limiting or defining how much education someone had, or the experience, that we were limiting the number who could be involved. And it just said it was not enforceable. So I don't see that we really have a problem there. And the last item has to do with solid waste. And it seems like the easiest way to deal with that is to talk about the fact that the person will be involved in reviewing and commenting on the draft solid waste plan, and the solid waste program is in environmental resources. They coordinate it, as I understand it. And I think that pretty much takes care of most of the issues that were outlined for us there. Are there other issues that you've heard that we need to be addressing? Okay. Maybe we'll go ahead and go to public comment and see if there's anyone does that sound good? We'll go ahead and open up public comment. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak? Yeah, you could just bring on your screen. I see Alexandra has her hand up. Good morning, Alexandra.
Good morning, all. Thank you so much for all that you're doing. I just wanted to raise two quick things. One is that the money that was secured by Liz Levitt was for a water study.
Oh, that's
for
the water meters. Okay.
Guaymas Island, and it didn't include anything about a build out analysis. The other thing is that I realized that Deborah Lakanoff and our other state representatives put forward a bill about salmon recovery that introduced a concept that I think was really powerful, which is net ecological gain as a standard being applied. This bill was intended to change the Growth Management Act to consider how things are evaluated. And I'm just thinking any place where up till now, all we've talked about is environmental impact statements. So we're talking about, well, how much allowable damage could there be? And instead of that, I'm wondering if there's any place in this document that you're creating here that we could insert this concept of net ecological gain, as a standard against which to measure development or whatever, because we're in a situation where that would be really useful.
I shouldn't do that. I'll send you a note on it.
Okay, so the bill is HB 1117. It didn't actually make it all the way through and get past this time, but it did make it through several of the committees, and I think they just ran out of time. I'm not sure of the details on it, but that's the number of the bill. But really useful and exciting, to see, here's a new direction to go. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Okay. So I'll go ahead and close public comment. And the next piece would really be like kind of what our next steps are. And I feel like I kind of have to get this document back together and out to you. And then I heard a recommendation that this should be really brief and kind of not too complicated. So I will strive for those things and hope that you all will help me. So we will try to have something out early next week, and we have to get it to the full commission. I think the date is Tuesday, if I remember correct, that you have to get it ahead of time. So does that sound like the next steps? Yes, Liz.
Yes, to your question does sound like the next step. And I just wonder if somebody can clarify for me, we're not presenting tonight.
No.
When are we presenting? So who's presenting tonight then?
According to the agenda, process is on. And
But who else?
let's see, I have that agenda here someplace. Well,
That's okay. I can look at the
Yeah,
agenda.
I'm sorry. I
I
thought I
think it
had
was
it.
just, I think it was just this committee because two committees presenting is a lot of committees presenting.
No, there's a couple other things on
Oh,
there.
there are?
'Cause
Well,
they
I know,
also
but-
put us on for the next day. And they pulled us off of that. I'm not sure if the discussion of ranked choice voting is on somewhere, and so is, I have the 2 days kind of mixed up, so I don't really know all of what's on, but we're not on. There's enough other stuff. Governance is on. And transitional tourism, I think, is on.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And did we get clarity about missing, is it 4 full commission meetings or does it include? I just have a whole series of appointments. It's going to begin to conflict, so trying to get
Well,
clarity.
It has to be in a row.
Yeah,
If
okay.
they're in a row, you have an issue.
And is it the full commission or is it subcommittee and the full commission or just full commission meetings?
It's full commission.
Full commission.
Okay, all right. I will try to dance appointments around that. Thank you, Dick. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thanks. Okay, yes, Tom.
I just wanted to tell you all, speaking of missing meetings, I'll be gone next week to a little family vacation down on the Oregon coast. So
Oh, good.
carry
sounds
on without
great.
me.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Sharon.
Yeah, since we are going to have a half-hour discussion with Rick Hughes on Friday at 2, do we need to publicly announce that meeting, and what Zoom link are we going to
It's
provide?
not, I
It's-
don't think it's a public meeting. I think it's an
No.
informal meeting with
Right.
someone who,
It's not a public meeting.
yeah, we're speaking with him kind of off the record, right? Am I wrong? I don't,
I
We
don't
have
know.
to
That's
ho-
what I'm asking.
We have to hold down the number of commissioners, I believe, who attend it in order to avoid it being a public meeting. Is that right?
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, Sharon, did you invite only members of that committee? I
Yes,
forget what. Okay,
It's our committee.
it's this
Okay.
committee. Yeah.
okay,
I mean,
then you're fine. But the only thing you have to watch, like Bob or somebody just said, is if 10 commissioners show up by some reason, somebody's got to get off.
no, this is just for him to speak to the Climate and Environment Committee.
Doesn't, I know, but if other commissioners hear about it or decide to join, you just got to be conscious. If there's 10, somebody has to leave, because
Okay.
then it becomes a public meeting.
A-
And
And Sharon, about setting it up, Sharon, you can either do it yourself or you can ask Catherine to do it. I've asked Catherine or Olivia to set meetings up for me like this before, and they've been happy to do it. And I've also set them up myself.
I just don't know if I should be using Catherine's time. I could use my own Zoom account, but I don't know if that's proper.
You can do that.
I think your own Zoom account is the way to go.
Okay.
Yeah, it's preferable.
Okay.
Yes, Tom.
Well, I just want to tell you, I'm buying my shrimp cocktail sauce tomorrow, and I will be gone on Friday shrimping.
And I'll be with Tom, both in the shrimping and going down in the Oregon coast.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know about anybody else, but I heard that as an invitation. So Tom, when and where?
Okay, so
Maybe
Do I
I'll eat
have
it
a mo-
right here.
do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion,
Okay,
seconded.
everybody in favor?
Hi.
Bye.
Okay,
Aye,
so,
twice.
okay, so we're gonna adjourn the meeting, and I'll